It's an interesting proposition, this one. See what you think. We're in the area of San Miguel in Caacupé. It happens to be actually a very well situated area, only a very short distance to one of the best supermarkets. There's a gas station just not too far from here. You could live in a place like this and literally walk to anywhere that you needed to in Caacupé, which is a good thing. I'm also told that it's a fairly well-to-do area. I've passed through it many times. I haven't really paid too much attention to it, but I do recall when driving around a few of these streets, there are some pretty flash houses, despite the fact that this particular one is fairly run down, as you will see. In respect to this house, my understanding is that it was initially a very well kept house and then it's been a rental, and we know how that story ends. It's been really run down. So as you'll see, there's quite a bit of clutter and rental related debris that's been left behind. This is the way I like to see any property, because you see it warts and all, it hasn't been dollied up. That's definitely the case. It is in its raw state, so you get to see it good, bad and ugly. And I think that's a good thing. But the first thing that I noticed and appreciate is that I'm standing under this beautiful big mango rosa tree. The mango roses are those big whopping mangoes. There's a few varieties of mangoes, but the mango roses are the ones that are really coveted because they're absolutely stunning. As I walk up to this property, the first thing I look at is the roof line, and I can see that it's got a little bit of bowing over what seems to be the carport there. So that wood's just sort of bowing a bit, but the rest of the roof line's nice and tight, nice and straight. So hopefully you wouldn't be getting too much water coming in, if at all. That's something you really have to keep an eye out for. And those beams that are supporting the roof, they're all relatively nice and tightly situated. So at least that's good news. And when I look around at the property in general, it's got these sort of, I guess, features that they've put in, which just says to me that at some stage someone cared a bit. That fence is nice and high, which I really like. So if you put something up there just as a gentle deterrent, like a like razor wire, or perhaps sometimes they put glass or something up there, well, nobody would be climbing over. You could even electric wire up there if you're really keen and wanted to keep people away from the prospect of climbing over. But it's an extra high fence, so you'd want to be a bit of a MacGyver to get over there. We've got a carport and it leads into a once well cared for house. And just looking down at the base of this house, at the front here, it doesn't have any real problems. It's got a slider door. The other thing I notice is that it's got this drain, so they've at least paid some thought to running the water away from the front aspect of the property, which is good thinking. So just coming into the carport, that timber looks like it's actually not bad quality timber. It just needs some hoisting up, I think, and just rectifying. That's a long span when you look at it from there, running all the way to that beam, holding all that weight. You might even consider replacing the tiles with a lighter laminar or something just to take the weight off those beams, but there's various things you can do. It's got some nice bars, pretty secure little house. Then you come out to like this little, I guess, potentially barbecue area, backyard area, nice little private spot actually. Again, a nice wall there. Looks like they've had internet connection. And as you walk around the house, the thing that I do like is that it's kind of surrounded by greenery and trees and stuff. So it's got a nice sort of leafy feel. It's actually a nice breeze coming through those trees, which is nice. Nothing sort of that sticks out at you in terms of Issues on this side. There is a bit of a hairline crack there. Doesn't run up there, so it's not anything too catastrophic. The other thing I do like, it looks like those windows open. So you can have the windows open of an evening and still be secure with the bars, which is good. There's some nice wires sticking out the wall there. It looks like there's been a light or something. A little bit of hairline cracking, nothing too drastic. And the one thing that I would definitely be doing is sorting out the fact that that has no guttering on it. So you've just got all that water just streaming down. It'd be running in here and then it'd be going into your carport. So you want to sort your water runoff. That's definitely a biggie for me. What's in there? Oh, there's a little toilet hiding in there. There you go. If you're in the barbecue area and you can't make it inside, maybe you had some dodgy asado or something, you can just dash in there and you're good to go. That's funny the way they tuck that in there like that. Good on them. So, just coming around. Here's a bit of a crack. Now, you can see it goes up. There's a bit of a crack in the mortar there. It tells me there's a little bit of kind of strain going on there. Now, I did do a quick whip around before I started the camera and noticed as we go around here, there's a bit more of a issue going on. Some sort of crack there. I can't tell if there's been something in there that they've taken out or if it's just a repair to a crack. But whatever it is, there's been some issue. Now, I'm not seeing any significant slumping of the back there, so it's cracks, but it doesn't look like it's interfering with the roof line or anything, but definitely something you just need to think about. It does sort of go down just slightly into the rock work at the base, so it shows that it's kind of, you know, more than just a little insignificant crack. There's another one under the window, which is quite common that you see them under the windows. But if you look up, it doesn't travel up through there. I guess you do need to be aware of these structural issues, but at the same time, they don't take you entirely by surprise. There's usually something going on with these concrete structures. They're like a brittle biscuit, really. So any movement in a concrete structure is going to result in some sort of cracks or some sign of it. I think you've got to strike a balance between being aware of it but not freaking out too much, otherwise you'll never get over any sort of places here in Paraguay or indeed many other parts of South and Central America. It's just quite a regular feature. And just following on from our video about electricity, there you go, there's some interesting wire work just sticking out of the ground there. Definitely something that you'd want to get onto. Don't know what that's about. I don't know what this is either. I think just the dog has been doing a bit of impromptu excavation. Might be a budding builder. They've had an air con here at some stage and removed it, which isn't a big deal. You can put another one in. But that's an interesting feature, an outside light hanging off the bracket from the air conditioner. Wow, that's innovation right there. But there you go, it's relatively straight apart from that. If you look down there, there's nothing too scary in terms of that line. It's a pretty straight line, and that's a pretty straight line too. Otherwise, it's not too bad. But the first thing that I think of when I look at this is I would be excavating that and putting a big French drain and running the water right away. So as you know, I've got a pathological issue with moisture around my foundations. The other thing that I would say in regards to security is these sliding doors are a real weak point. And it's not uncommon with those that if you give them a vigorous shake, sometimes they'll just pop open. So in any house like this where you see those sliding doors, you definitely want to have some means of totally securing it, because you can have all these bars on your windows, but if you don't have them on your sliding doors, that's where you're going to have issues potentially. Now, the other thing that I'm thinking about with this place is with all this covered in, potentially, if you did some work, you could line that out, rectify the roof, and you could extend the house. You could build your carport out here if you wanted. Just something to think about if you decided that this place wasn't big enough. Where's all of your grey water going to? All things that you want to know about. So just going inside, it's got a line roof, so it's hard to tell what's going on the roof line. But as I say, it looks like the roof's in reasonable condition, at least in terms of its line. And if a roof is in bad condition, you'll usually see it slumping. So this is like I guess a big communal lounge dining room area. And sort of a stone top there, bit of a cooking base, space for a fridge and that, so it's okay. Crack there. It's not really structural, but it might be indicative that there's a little bit of movement going on. There's some plugs and stuff. Now there's more mould than I would like to see. And there's some cracking up there. I would hazard a guess that there is because of lack of ventilation rather than rising damp. You do have some rising damp issues though, because the rising damp is obviously down on the floor line, and that's quite drummy. So you've got some issues in regards to the rising damp. Now, if you were to excavate that trench outside that I was talking about and really run the water away from that, this here, I would hazard a guess, might be wicking from outside that wall. So it's not an absolute definite, but if you were to do something out there with a French drain or something similar, you may find that this would perhaps be alleviated, hopefully. Something you'd have to really attack. And just thinking now, that side of the house, I would be doing something to totally make that such that the water just doesn't get to it. So put some sort of overhang or something, but just totally eliminate any water coming onto the side of the house. Definitely something that needs to be addressed. It's not catastrophic, it's just something that you definitely want to think about. Down here is again quite drummy, quite loose. So the place feels like it's been locked up for quite a while. It feels kind of musky, sort of a bit of a smell to it, that musky sort of smell. So it most definitely needs a very good airing out, ventilation, and then some rectification. And then it comes into a bedroom. Again, pretty affected by rising damp and mould. And at some stage, the house has been thoughtfully built, perhaps not perfectly, but thoughtfully, because you've got things like a relatively new fuse box, a bit broken off it, lots of plugs and stuff, but definitely needs some love. The lights aren't on at the moment, so this just comes into a bathroom. Widowmaker. Toilet. All that sort of carry on. And so just coming back out to that bedroom again. And then into the living room. And then there's another little kind of bedroom here. Again, sorry about the darkness, but we don't have lights. This bedroom doesn't sort of seem so musky, so as I say, that sort of moisture is coming from that side of the house. And this has got its own bathroom, which is nice. So it's a 2-bedder, 2-bathroom house with an outside toilet. So that's nice that each room's got its own bathroom. That's cool. It's just like a 2-bedroom unit, really, with a relatively nice vantage looking out to the street. That's quite nice. And that nice overhang there, so you could hang out there. You could even put a little pool or something there. So just coming out, lots of scat. And then as you go out to the street, this is where you really get a feeling of the fact that this property has been an unloved rental property. And as is commonly the case, once a rental property is abandoned, everything sort of goes to crap. And outside of the house, it's really been let go. I think that once people realise someone's not in a house, that becomes the local dumping ground, and it definitely appears to be the case here. So just looking around, it's just on a little dirt road that comes off a very good sealed road, so it's only maybe 60, 70 metres down there and you're onto a decent paved road. And the house is on the corner, and check this out, this is pretty gross. It's become a dumping site. I don't know what the situation is, because generally there's a rubbish collection service in a lot of the parts of Caacupé. I know there is in front of our house. And if you just look back over my shoulder there, there's a rubbish bin of sorts. So they're putting it in there because it's obviously getting collected. So I'd hazard a guess and say that because this is abandoned, the people obviously aren't paying their fee to have their rubbish taken away. So it's either been put there by the outgoing tenant or it's been dumped there, but for whatever reason it's not being collected. But that's something you could reinstitute and get it sorted out, because when I look at the property and the neighbours, it looks really neat down there. There's no real rubbish down the street that's being lined up. So it really is this house that is attracting this unfortunate scenario. The other thing that I kind of think's cool about this house is they've gone to the effort of putting these trees and sort of making it a bit of a feature. It does tell me that at some stage they cared for this place. It has been once loved, and I think for the right person it could be loved again and really brought back to a really serviceable, happy little house, but definitely needs some sorting out, particularly those interior aspects and the damp issues. It's got a good fence all the way around, so you wouldn't need to do too much to move into this place and be pretty secure, as far as secure can go. And this is the sort of area, just to give you context, it's a safe area. I've just rocked up here. There's no problems here in terms of people gawking at you or making you feel like you're not welcome. In general, Caacupé isn't like that. You won't find areas, for the most part, where you'll rock up and get the hairy eyeball and people not wanting you to be there. It's not really that sort of place in general, so you needn't worry about that. But like any place, anywhere in the world, you need to be cautious of things like break-ins and just take general precautions. You know, with a house like this, with these good features in terms of its fences and stuff, at least you are ahead of the game and you wouldn't need to do too much to make it relatively secure. What's interesting is right next door is a vacant block of land. I wonder what that's all about. But who knows? Who knows what you could do, potentially. And just walking back to the house, I'll just try and be discreet and not be too rude, but suffice to say, you know, the neighbouring properties vary a bit in terms of their upkeep, but in terms of this house on its corner and then the houses down there, if this was cleaned up, it would be a nice neat little precinct. So they're asking 300 millioni for this property. I understand that it may be negotiable, and my opinion is that it's probably in need of some reconsideration at that price point, but not drastically so. It's a very good location in terms of proximity to things, and it's a pretty well regarded area, even though there are the odd property around that's a bit tatty. I would be thinking anywhere between that range of say 250 to 300. You would be kind of in the ballpark depending on how much you liked it. 300 is a reasonable starting point based on the fact that you may be negotiating and perhaps getting a keener price. But there's a lot of house there. There's a lot to work with. There is some work to do, so you need to work that into your budget. Good news is labour and tradesmen are relatively cheap here, so an issue like that just needs some care and attention, but at least it's not going to kill you. It's just a simple brick structure. It doesn't have cavities and a whole range of different components to it, so you're not paying for all sorts of things from insulation and framing and plasterboard, nails and everything else that goes into a complicated Western style house. It is what it is, a simple brick structure. So at least you're dealing with simple componentry and you're not going to be strangled in terms of pricing of the items that may need to be replaced. But the one thing I really do like is you're just surrounded by a lot of greenery. You've got this vacant block across the road there. As you look down the road, it's all kind of green. You could be in kind of like a semi-rural part of town, really. And this is the weekend, and I'm not hearing even the slightest bit of doof-doof. Not to say that it's not present somewhere, but this area is actually not renowned for doof-doof. There are some areas that are, but this area I don't think is so much of a doof-doof type place. It's more families, and it's pretty chilled. I do know someone that lived not too far from here a couple of months ago, and they were quite happy here and it was very convenient for them. A nice little two-bedder, potentially more than 2 bedrooms, 2 bathroom, 3 toilets in a nice part of town. I like being on a corner because at present, essentially, you've only got one neighbour. There's an empty block next door. Who knows, that might get built on one day, but judging on this area, there's many other places that people could build before they build on there. And also there might be the possibility of that maybe even being available. I don't know, but the fact that it's empty, there might be a chance if that was something desirable. At present, there's no neighbours there and you've only got, I guess, neighbours over the back of you. So that's cool. You don't really have neighbours pressed up on either side. And I always like a corner block because I think it gives you options. For example, over the back of the house, I didn't take too much of a look in terms of its dimension, but potentially you could even perhaps put an entry point in there, bring your car around the back, and you could devote the front for something else. I'm not saying that's a particularly good idea. I'm just freewheeling here, but the point I'm making is that being on a corner does give you potential options to maximise your space. And just one other thing that I'm noticing as I wind up is the metalwork on this thing is pretty decent and pretty high. And this gate is not mechanised, but it easily could be. So all features that you rock up and you sort of just maybe overlooked to an extent, but they all cost money. It all costs money. So when you look at an empty block of this size around here, and then you look at what it would cost to put all this in place, the price is in the ballpark. And that's what these videos are all about, is just bringing you random properties that people I know say, hey, there's a house here for sale, do you want to check it out? And the purpose is that we just make these videos, give you the opportunity to check them out. I'll give my random thoughts for what they're worth, but in doing so, we'll just get a better handle of what's out there so that we've got a realistic understanding of what's available, rather than just arriving here and being told, oh yeah, it's a nice house and it can be yours for $500,000. You know, that's what we're trying to keep a lid on. So chip away and everything will work out in the end. But I hope you enjoy that, and I have. I think this is interesting, and it's got me thinking about the potential in this beautiful little town that I've come to love. So until next time, take care. Ciao.